Smoke curled up toward the blood-red sky. The air cracked with the sound of distant explosions, and the earth beneath her trembled like it was alive and afraid. Vera lay still. Her silver armor scorched her left side, bleeding out slowly, a warm stream of blue soaking into the black ash around her. The battle on Xerax 4 had ended, not with glory but silence. The wind carried nothing but the smell of plasma, and melted steel. Broken machines littered the fields like bones. Ancient and forgotten, her squad was gone, all of them. The finest of the Kharal Empire wiped out by an enemy they had been taught to mock humans. They were supposed to be primitive, weak emotional creatures with loud voices and fragile bodies, but they had fought like beasts, smart, coordinated, dangerous in ways no war manual had prepared her. For Vera's breath came shallow, her chest armor dented inward where the last drone blast had struck her. She could feel the plasma burn eating through skin to muscle. Her weapon had slipped from her grasp. Now, just another piece of metal in the graveyard. She stared at the sky, its crimson clouds flickering as if lit from below by dying stars. Her mind felt slow but sharp like the edge of a sword, too cold to hold. "This is it," she whispered. "I die on enemy soil as a warrior of fire." She closed her eyes, waited for the final silence to claim her. The kind her instructors had promised was clean and fast, but it never came. Instead, she felt warmth, softness. Not the burn of plasma, not the hard weight of failure, but something strange and impossible. Beneath her back was no longer ash and stone, but something padded and smooth, and above her, the sky was no longer red. It was white. Blinding white, like light through thin cloth. And for the first time since she was 10 years old, she felt fear. Her eyes snapped open, she gasped, a ceiling flat. Pale, painted in soft human colors. She turned her head slowly. The world shifted, but did not spin. A window nearby. Let in sunlight, real sunlight. Not the artificial glow of war zones outside. A breeze moved a curtain. A chair sat near the bed, and beside it a table with something steaming in a bowl. This is not a med bay, she thought. No machines, no restraints, no guards. Her body ached, every muscle sore. Her left arm was wrapped in white bandages, unfamiliar but clean. Her chest had a tight wrap across it, holding the broken ribs in place. Her armor was gone, replaced by soft cloth garments, loose and awkward, but covering her skin. She tried to sit up, failed, her limbs too heavy. Then the door opened. A human male stepped in, tall, with short brown hair and quiet eyes. He held a tray in his hands, and when he saw her awake, he paused. "Oh, you're up," he said. Voice gentle, not surprised but relieved. Vera's instincts screamed threat. Her fingers twitched, searching for a blade that wasn't there. She narrowed her eyes and growled, "Where am I?" The man walked slowly, set the tray down. "You're safe," he said. "I found your escape pod just past the tree line. You were bleeding bad. I brought you back here." She said nothing, her eyes scanning every corner of the room, looking for cameras, traps, sentries. Nothing, just a human house with human furniture, and a human man who looked at her. Not with fear, not with control, but with care. "I took your armor off to treat the wounds. Hope that's all right," he added. "You were burning up. You should have let me die," she spat. He tilted his head a little. "Yeah, well, that's not really my style. Alien or not, dying alone in a crater didn't seem right." He picked up the bowl. It was soup, smelled of roots and herbs, and something faintly sweet. "Eat when you're ready," he said, placing it beside her. Then he turned and walked away, left her alone. Vera stared at the food, her heart still racing, her blood still hot with the memory of war. This was not how warriors were treated. This was not how enemies treated prisoners. And yet the spoon was warm in her hand, and when she finally lifted it to her mouth, the taste was gentle and full of things she did not understand. "What kind of enemy heals the one sent to destroy them?" she whispered. Outside, the human named Micah leaned against the wall, listening, breath held, heart quiet, unsure what he had brought into his home and what she would become. The morning light crept slowly across the floor, like it too was unsure if it belonged here. Vera sat upright on the edge of the bed, the soft human blanket draped across her shoulders, her eyes sharp, now awake. Aware, though her body still ached from the wound across her ribs, her mind was clear. A soldier's clarity honed in battle. This house was too quiet, No boot stomping, no orders, no alarms, just birdsong, and the scent of something cooking, something warm, something entirely human. She stood slowly, legs shaking under her, the unfamiliar clothes clinging awkwardly to her frame. Micah had left them folded neatly at the foot of the bed, simple pants and a faded shirt. They were soft-smelled faintly of smoke and herbs, but they covered her enough to move without shame. She moved through the hallway like a ghost, her steps silent, her senses alert, every creak in the floor, every flicker of light catalogued, mapped, remembered. Then she heard it, a soft humming. The sound pulled her toward the kitchen where the human stood his back to her. Pan in one hand, spatula in the other. He was making food again. Eggs from the smell sizzling on metal. He turned when he sensed her, and his eyes lit up. Not in fear, not in alarm, just calm, surprise. "You're up," he said again, his voice the same as before. Quiet, steady like a stream that knew where it was going. She didn't speak, not yet. Her eyes stayed on his hands. No weapons, just utensils. "You walked all the way here," he added. "You're healing fast." She stepped into the room, the tension in her shoulders heavy but not ready to strike. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Micah turned off the stove and plated the food before answering. "Didn't seem right to leave someone dying out there, alien or not. You were bleeding. You needed help." "I am Corral," she said, voice low. "Sharp, you know what that means?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I do. You're supposed to be my enemy, right? Then why save me? Because I saw someone broken, not a threat, just someone." He placed the plate on the small wooden table and sat down across from it, not facing her directly, but waiting. Open, relaxed. "You don't fear me?" she asked. "Oh, I'm terrified," he said with a small grin. "But you're not trying to kill me yet, so that's a good sign." Her eyes narrowed. "You are strange. You wouldn't be the first to say that." She sat finally, her movements careful. Slow, she stared at the food again. Eggs, toasted bread, a cup of something dark and hot. "Coffee," he said, noticing her stare, bitter stuff. "But it grows on you." She picked up the fork awkwardly, clumsy with the human tool, but managed to bite. The texture was soft, salty, warm. Not what a warrior would eat, but it filled her stomach in a way rations never could. "Not bad, huh?" She said nothing, but her silence spoke louder than any words. After the meal, Micah gave her a slow tour of the house, a space crafted not for war, but for quiet living. Shelves lined with old books, a fireplace full of ash, a worn couch that had seen better years. Then he opened the back door and gestured to the garden. "Come on," he said, "you should see this." The sun bathed the yard in light. Flowers grew in wild colors. Purple, yellow, blue bees floated lazily between petals, and in the center stood a tree, small but proud, its branches spreading like open arms. "You live here alone?" she asked finally. "Yeah, got tired of cities, too loud. This place gives me peace. You are a soldier, used to be, not anymore." Left that behind, she stepped onto the grass, her bare feet sinking slightly into the soil. It was strange, alien, and soft, but not unpleasant. In the Empire, peace is weakness. Micah looked at her, not with judgment, but understanding. "Then maybe your empire needs to learn better." She turned sharply, eyes flashing. "Be careful with your words, human." "And your people tried to destroy mine," he said evenly. They stood there, the sun between them, the silence heavy but not angry. Just honest, two survivors on opposite ends of a long war, seeing something new in each other. That night he offered her the couch. She refused. At first, warriors did not accept comfort from strangers, but her body was tired, healing, and she had no strength left to argue. He left her alone again. No questions, no demands, just space and stillness. She lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling above her, tracing the lines in the old wood, wondering not where she was, but who she was now. She touched the bandages on her arm, felt the edges of healing flesh beneath, and whispered, "What is happening to me?" Outside, Micah sat by the window, looking at the stars, a cup of tea in hand, wondering the same thing. What happens when you save something you were taught to hate? The sun filtered gently through the kitchen window, casting golden bars of light across the faded wooden floor. Vera stood by the door, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of smoke and something sweet. Her eyes wandered over the quiet space shelves lined with jars full of herbs and spices, a kettle humming softly on the stove, and beside it Micah humming with it, low and tuneless, but somehow comforting. He glanced up, saw her watching and smiled. Not too wide, not smug, just real, the kind of smile that didn't ask anything in return. "Coffee's almost ready," he said. "You might hate it. Most people do the first time?" She didn't answer, just stepped slowly into the kitchen. The floor creaked beneath her weight and she scanned everything again. Not for threats anymore, but for understanding this world. This house, this man made no sense, and yet it pulled at something inside her like a distant song she had once heard in a dream. He poured the black liquid into two mismatched mugs and set one on the table in front of her. She looked at it, then at him. "Is it poison?" she asked without irony. Micah chuckled. "Only on Mondays." She raised an eyebrow. "Is it Monday?" He shrugged. "Does it matter?" She sat slowly wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic, the heat soaking into her palms without permission. It felt good, too good. "Why do you live like this?" she asked. "This place is old, fragile, alone." "I like the quiet," he said eventually, "out there." He gestured toward the distant sky. "The world is loud, too much noise, too many lies, this place. It lets you hear your own thoughts." She nodded slowly, as if filing that away for later. "And you're alone by choice." "Sometimes," he said, "sometimes by accident." They sat in silence for a while. Not heavy, not awkward. Just silence, like a soft coat worn in winter. After a while, Micah stood stretched and opened a small wooden door beside the kitchen. "Come on, I want to show you something." She followed, cautious but curious. They stepped into a narrow hallway, then out onto a porch behind the house. The garden. It stretched wide, and untamed wildflowers in every color burst from the soil like fire through snow. Tall grass swayed in the wind, and tiny insects flitted from leaf to leaf, dancing in morning light. Vera had never seen anything like it, not on Corral, not in war, not in the training domes of her youth. "It's alive," she said softly, as if the word itself might break the moment. "Yeah," Micah said, "everything here is just trying to grow. Even me." She walked forward, slowly crouched near a patch of violet blooms and touched one gently, its petals folded against her fingers, delicate and strange. "We have nothing like this where I'm from," she whispered. "What do you have?" "Metal walls. Silence, obedience." Micah was quiet a long time, then said, "That sounds like prison." "It was home," she replied, then looked up from the flower, "but I never knew what that meant until now." She turned to him, studying his face again, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the faint scar just below his jaw, the way he never looked away from her, even when he should. "You are not what I expected from your kind," she said. "You either. What did you expect? Violence, pride, maybe a knife?" She smirked, just barely. "You wouldn't have been wrong." He stepped closer, not touching her, just near enough for his warmth to reach her skin. "And what do you think now?" She looked down at her hands, the bandages fraying at the edges, the scars beneath them healing slower than the wounds. "I think I don't know who I am anymore." "Good," he said. "That's the start of something better." That night she sat alone in the living room, watching the fire flicker in the hearth. Micah had gone to sleep early. Leaving her the silence and the stars, she traced the lines of an old map on the wall, following rivers and roads with her eyes. And for the first time in her life, she wondered what it would be like to stay. The air changed before the sky did. Vera felt it not with her skin, but with the quiet thrum in her blood that had kept her alive through years of battle. It was subtle at first, a stillness in the trees, the sudden absence of birdsong, the shift in wind that made the back of her neck prickle. She stood barefoot on the porch, a mug of warm tea in her hands, watching the horizon while the garden around her whispered in leaves and soft movement. Inside the house, Micah was fixing an old radio, the kind with knobs and static and wires that didn't belong to any modern time. He tapped the side of it once, twice, and the static cleared just long enough for music to break through. But Vera wasn't listening to that. Her attention was elsewhere, focused, sharp. "Micah," she said, voice low but firm. He looked up, sensing the weight in her tone. Something wrong. She stepped into the grass, her eyes narrowing toward the forest edge. They're coming, Micah blinked. Who's coming? She didn't answer, not yet. Instead, she moved to the corner of the porch where a rusted metal rod leaned against the railing. A tool, not a weapon, but long, heavy enough to strike. She picked it up slowly, testing its weight. Micah stepped outside, his face darkening. Talk to me. My people, she said finally, or what they still call themselves, my people. The Empire, the ones who sent me to die. I thought they left you for dead. They did, but they don't leave loose ends. Micah looked toward the trees, and for the first time since meeting her, he looked afraid. Not of her, but of what followed her. What do they want? They want me gone. And if I resist, they will burn this place to ash. A beat of silence passed between them. Then Micah spoke. Then we run. No. We hide, no. Then we fight. She turned to him, slowly, really looking at him. His body still bore the scar from the last battle. His movements still stiff, his strength not yet returned. You can't fight them. Then I die with you. She stared at him, stunned by the certainty in his voice, by the raw truth in his eyes. He was not trained, not armed, but he had chosen her. She looked away quickly, then back toward the woods. The wind had stilled entirely now. Even the trees had stopped moving. That's when the red light blinked between the trees, a slow, steady pulse, not from nature. From a hunter, she stepped back onto the porch, handed Micah the metal pipe she had sharpened days before. If you stay by me, you follow my words, you move when I move, you run only if I say so. Micah gripped the pipe and nodded once. Understood, they stepped into the night together. The woods greeted them with silence so complete it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then came the clicking, not mechanical, not organic. Something in between, and then the voice. Low cold filtered through, something unnatural. Vera of House Corral. You are marked return now, or earth will fall. Micah stiffened. What the hell was that? She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked forward. A figure stepped into view from the shadows. 7 feet tall, black armor like chitin, wrapped in layers of bone. One glowing red eye burned from the center of its face. Krex. She whispered his name like a curse. Micah whispered back. That's a hunter. One of the worst, she replied, then added quietly. He was once my commanding officer. The hunter spoke again. You were born in blood, raised for war. Now you sip tea and sleep in blankets. What would your ancestors say? They would say I failed, she replied, stepping forward, but they never taught me how to live. The hunter's plasma blade ignited with a hiss. Then die learning, he lunged and the forest exploded into violence. Micah fell to the side, narrowly avoiding the first strike Vera blocked with the rod sparks flying, the force nearly knocking her off balance. They circled Krex's movements, precise, brutal, unrelenting. He spoke no more, only attacked Micah, moved behind trees looking for openings, waiting for her signal. Then it came, a glance. A shift in her feet, Micah charged, slammed the pipe into Krex's back. The armor cracked just slightly, that was all she needed. Vera twisted low, grabbed a sharp stone, and drove it into the hunter's neck joint. A burst of light exploded. Krex screamed, and then he was gone. Vanished in a burst of static and retreat. The forest fell silent again, but it was not the same silence as before. Vera dropped to her knees, breathing hard. Micah rushed to her, grabbing her shoulder. You okay? She nodded slowly. You distracted him. You saved me first, he said. They didn't say anything after that. Not as they limped back through the woods, not as they stepped into the house, not as the rain began to fall soft and steady against the roof. But when she looked at him, really looked at him, her eyes full of pain and something dangerously close to tenderness, she realized he had given her something the Empire never could. A reason to fight for more than survival. Rain fell in steady threads against the windows, the storm outside folding the world into gray and shadow. Inside the cabin, Vera moved like a storm herself. Her hands pressed hard against Micah's bleeding side, his face pale, his breath shallow. She had not seen it in the moment, not until they were already home. Not until the adrenaline wore off and he collapsed in the doorway with a quiet laugh that turned into a groan. "Guess I'm not built for alien fights," he muttered before his legs gave out. She caught him before he hit the floor, his weight pulling her to her knees, his blood soaking into the fabric of her borrowed shirt. Not her blood, not this time. "Micah," she hissed, gripping his shirt tightly. "Stay with me." He blinked up at her, dazed smile fading. "It's all right." "No, it's not." She growled, dragging him toward the couch with strength, born not from muscle but from terror, raw and unfiltered. She tore open cabinets, her fingers flying over vials of dried herbs, strips of clean cloth and human medication tubes she did not understand but used anyway. Pressing gauze to the wound, tying knots with trembling hands. Hands that had only known war now shaking for a single fragile life. Micah groaned again, his eyes fluttering. "You're good at this," he whispered. "You talk too much," she snapped, but her voice cracked near the end. She couldn't stop her hands from moving, couldn't stop whispering under her breath. Old chorale words forgotten by most prayers taught in youth, not meant to save lives, only to honor their loss. But she said them anyway again and again, as if they might bind more than flesh. After what felt like an hour, the bleeding slowed. The shaking in her hands did not. She stayed kneeling beside him, her forehead resting against his shoulder, her fingers still gripping his wrist for a pulse that now beat slower, steadier. Micah opened his eyes again, his voice a rasp. "You're crying." She blinked, touched her cheek, felt wetness. "I don't cry," she said softly. "Then someone else must have taken your place." She looked away, not wanting him to see her like this. Not broken but open, and that was worse. He reached out weakly and caught her hand. "Thank you," he whispered. She couldn't answer, not with words, not yet. That night she did not sleep. She sat beside him, listening to the rise and fall of his breath, counting each one like a vow, each exhale like a thread tying her to something more than duty. In the quiet between lightning strikes, she whispered, "Why did you help me?" Micah's voice was nearly gone. "Because you needed someone. You could have run, but then who would make you breakfast?" She let out a soft laugh, sharp and wet, even now. Even now, he echoed, eyes closing again, and still he gave her strength. The rain softened as dawn approached. The world outside washed clean, but inside the storm remained. Vera stayed by his side, watching every breath, her fingers laced with his. For the first time in her life, she was not afraid of the enemy outside. She was afraid of losing what she had found within. The morning sky wasn't supposed to glow red, but it did. Vera felt the shift before she saw it. The pressure in the air changed. The forest stilled. The animals disappeared. Even the wind refused to move. She stepped outside barefoot again, her feet sinking into damp earth and dew-soaked grass. Her body still stiff from battle, her heart heavy from a night without sleep, but her senses sharp like the blade she once carried. Above the horizon, a massive shadow moved slowly through the clouds. Silent, imposing, a warship of the Coral Empire. Micah saw her from the window and limped toward the door, still wrapped in bandages, his steps uneven but urgent. "What is it?" he asked. She didn't take her eyes off the sky. "They're here, the Empire." She nodded once, her voice steady. "They came for me." Suddenly a voice boomed across the clouds, amplified, mechanical, ancient Vera of House Coral. "You have broken code, abandoned duty, tainted your blood. Return, or Earth will fall." Micah stood frozen beside her, his voice low. Did they just threaten the whole planet? She turned to him, her eyes cold. Yes, and they mean it. She walked forward slowly into the center of the open field, where the wildflowers once bloomed. Now flattened by the wind of the warship's arrival, the clouds above burned crimson under the ship's thrusters. The voices of her past echoed in her head. Obey, submit, survive. But she had come too far to kneel. She tilted her head to the sky and shouted, I am no longer yours. A beat of silence, then the reply came. Then you are nothing. Micah came to her side despite the pain, despite her protest. You don't have to face them alone. You're still healing, she said softly. I'd rather die with you than hide while they burn everything down. Her chest tightened. This man, this fragile, imperfect human, had more strength than anyone she had ever known. Then the first blast fell. Beams of red light slammed into the ground. Trees exploded. Fire erupted across the edge of the woods. Vera didn't hesitate. She turned, sprinted back into the house, grabbed the sharpened pipe, and turned to Micah. "Hide underground, wait for my signal. Know you'll die out there alone. And if you follow me without listening, I'll still lose you." "They locked eyes, then fight beside me," she said, "but follow my lead." He grabbed his weapon and nodded. Outside, crawl scouts were already landing, tall, black-armored figures scanning the terrain with red visors. Vera struck first, a blur of motion, her pipe slicing through the first enemy like it was a blade of energy. Micah followed, swinging wide, not perfect but fierce. Together they moved like a single storm. Then came the voice again. This time on every device, every signal across the earth. A masked commander of the Corral Empire, his face obscured by steel, his words cold. "Vera, you have one chance, surrender or your human dies next." Vera's hands shook not with fear, but rage. She grabbed a fallen Corral rifle and shouted into it, "Come for him, and I will remind the galaxy what a real Corral warrior is inside the house." Micah stumbled, breathing heavy pain in his side, but his eyes never left her. "You don't have to fight for me." He said, "I'm not," she replied. "I'm fighting for everything you showed me." That night the stars looked down on Earth, and for the first time a warrior born of war stood for peace, for love, for something truly her own. Smoke curled up into the sky in thick spirals as fire licked the edges of the once peaceful field. The ground torn open by landing pods and plasma strikes. The forest behind them burned slow and deep, but Vera stood at the center of it all. Blood on her hands, soot across her face, eyes bright like twin stars, unyielding. She wasn't wearing armor, but she had never been stronger. In one hand she held the sharpened pipe still warm from battle. In the other, Micah's hand, trembling, exhausted, but still reaching for hers. They stood together, facing the impossible. The Corral warship opened its side gates like a beast revealing its teeth. Dozens, hundreds of black-armored soldiers poured out, red visors scanning, weapons raised. "No hesitation," Micah gasped. "There's too many." Vera didn't blink. "Then we take down as many as we can, and if we fall with fire." Micah turned to her. "I'm not ready to die." She looked at him. "Then live for me, for what we've fought for." She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his forehead, a touch more sacred than any vow. Then she released his hand, lifted the pipe, and walked forward. The first wave hit like a hammer. Vera moved like a blade, fast, precise, deadly. Her knowledge of their weak points turned the stolen weapon in her hands into a force they couldn't counter. Micah stayed close. Not as strong, not as fast, but fierce. He fought not like a soldier, but like someone who refused to lose what had saved him. But it wasn't enough. The numbers pressed in. Vera fell, one knee to the ground. A blade raised above her chest. Micah screamed and dove. Tackled the enemy, too late, too small, and then a blast of light split the air. A rusted old ship descended from the sky like a miracle. Its cannons lit up the ground. And from within, humans emerged, resistance fighters, scattered survivors, but brave. Their leader shouted, "We saw the ship, knew something was wrong. Who's in charge here?" Micah pointed without thinking. She, as Vera, rose again, bleeding but burning. She grabbed a fallen Corral radio, raised it high, and roared into the open channel. "I am of Corral, blood reborn on Earth's soil. You called me traitor, I call myself free." Then she threw something small into the sky. A tracker, one Micah had ripped from an old escape pod. It latched onto the warship hull. Micah pressed the detonator on his arm. The sky erupted. Flames bloomed across the underbelly of the warship. Its engines failed. The ship began to fall, screaming into the horizon like a dying god. The remaining soldiers scattered, retreated, vanished, and then silence. Real, full, unshakable. Birds returned, wind stirred. The fire faded. Vera dropped to her knees. Micah caught her, both of them bloody, breathing alive. "You did it," he whispered. "No," she replied. "We did," he smiled. So what now? She looked up at the sky. No longer red. I stay. You're not going back to your people. They were never my people, not really. He held her tighter and she looked at him, voice soft. You're my home now. Days passed, the world began to heal. Word spread of an alien warrior who saved a human town. Some feared her, some worshipped her. She didn't care. She had Micah, his garden, his quiet, and a mirror. One evening she stood before it again, not to check her wounds, not to hide her scars, but to remember in the reflection she no longer saw a killer. She saw a protector. A woman changed, loved. Micah came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She whispered. The warrior died that day on the battlefield, but someone new was born, and she chose. Would you stand between worlds like Vera? Would you fight for someone the world tells you to fear? Comment below and tell us what you would choose when loyalty and love collide.